it was my yoga teacher training that first really highlighted to me, wow, you are very unkind to yourself. And my God, I would never speak like that to anybody I love.
Yoga Mara welcomes you to the Love Your Limits podcast. We are two sisters from the west of Ireland with a passion for helping people connect back to themselves and feel less alone on their journey. Both of us have contrasting personalities, career background, and life experience, yet each of us found physical, emotional, and mental healing from learning to live more intuitively and with integrity.
We will be sharing our own personal journeys alongside interviewing a wide range of health and wellness experts that will empower you to shed fear, self-doubt, and move into a place of self-love and confidence. It is time to put yourself first, create healthy boundaries, and learn to love your limits.
Well, hello there, Sister Rachel. How are you?
Fantastic.
Long time no see. I suppose this is our little introduction to people that don't know us and don't know much about Yoga Mara. So we are sisters. We are chalk and cheese, yin and yang as we like to call ourselves. And I think this is such a pinnacle moment for us, I feel, because little did we think when we were teenagers, after we turned chunks out of each other, you're wearing my jumper, that we would be in business together 5 years in. 6 years in August, which is crazy. But just absolutely loving this partnership. Like, I have learned so much from you, from this experience, from Yoga Mara, from the people that we've met along the way. And yeah, I just think it's a really nice time to just sit back and look back at how far we've come. And I suppose to give people and our lovely listeners an idea of what led us to this point. I know when we were traveling as well, that's kind of when I realized, the differences that Rachel has is what I actually admire in her the most. And I think growing up as well, you can find that like a struggle, especially with family. And, you know, when you're a sister as well, you're going to be compared. And I always compared myself to you as well, you know, looking up at my older sister. I like to put that in there. She is older, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for that.
But I think, yeah, when we were traveling and when we reconnected overseas in Australia, New Zealand, I think we got so close then. And that kind of started both our yoga journeys, really, didn't it? Because for you, I know you got really into the Bikram to begin with anyway. Do you want to tell people just a little bit of how you got into yoga and what led you on, I suppose, your journey to where we are now today?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, if somebody had told me 10 years ago that both of us would be in business together, I'd be like, are you right in the head? I just wouldn't have believed it. Because we used to, you know, we didn't really see eye to eye growing up. We're very different, very, as you say, chalk and cheese. And I think it was when we went traveling that both of us just connected so much deeper, and we saw each other's differences as strengths and teaching tools for one another. As like Dad would always say, Hannah, reel it in, and Rachel, reel it out. So we brought out the best in each other, and I think we embraced that so much traveling. And I remember realizing, like, when we were in New Zealand, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is my sister and she's my best friend. This is amazing. And then, you know, after that, while I was traveling, I did get into Bikram yoga, actually. So that's when my yoga journey began. And it's also the time I realized how close we actually could become and how close we were getting.
Yeah.
So that's when all of that was born. And my interest in yoga began in Melbourne, where I lived for a year. And I started with quite an intense practice, Bikram. So I remember my first class going, I was myself and the girls, and we went because it was like $20 for 10 sessions, which was such a good deal at the time. And it was a good deal today as well. But went in and I could barely stand for the whole class. I was like, I have to leave. This is horrendous. And I just remember, you know, just trying to get through to the end. And I said, I'm never going back to that class. And I remember one of the girls saying to me, look, you might as well give it another go. You've paid up. Give it a try. So I did. I went for another second class, and I actually could do a lot of the poses. I had prepped myself really well. And then the third class, I became hooked. And ever since then, you know, for about 3 years, I was practicing Bikram, but while I did enjoy the discipline of it and the feeling I had afterwards, I just got a bit tired of the predictability of it. And then I wanted to connect with something more fluid, more like a flow that I just, felt like different instructors could teach me different styles.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know the sequence that was going to come, and I loved that.
Yeah.
So it kept me curious. And then it was 2017, I went to do my own yoga teacher training, which is something I had been playing with. I had been talking or thinking about this for so long. And then eventually I actually took the plunge and went for it. And that was in Thailand in 2017. And I went, with the intention of becoming a yoga teacher, but nothing like setting up a business with my sister. I never even thought that was a possibility. But I also didn't realize how much it would teach me about myself and how much awareness it would shine on my inner dialogue. And that blew me away. So that was kind of the beginning of a very internal journey for me, and a very healing and transformative journey that took years. And it has led me to become the person I am today. And I'm so forever grateful for that. But it was you really when I came home. I remember I came home from Thailand from the yoga teacher training, and you were just so excited and enthusiastic about the idea of like, oh my gosh, we could set up a wellness business together. And I was looking at you as if to say, is she well in the head? Like, I can't. I'm the most terrified, fearful person. And you were just this fearless go-getter, ball of fire. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get sick.
But it's so funny to think, because like I remember you coming back from that trip to Thailand, and I could not get over the difference. And it wasn't like, basically, yes, yoga is incredible because, you're doing all these postures each day, and it is great for your physical body. But it was like your aura had changed, like your energy internally had shifted, and how your presence when you were there, and how you spoke, and how much more centered you sounded and aligned. And I was like, I need some of this. Because I remember going to Bikram with you in New Zealand and literally being like, I'm going to die. Like, it was the most horrific. And I'd be looking at you so combative, like, if my sister can do it, I can do it. And you were just like standing on your head, like just being amazing gazelle goddess. And I was like, I'm going to pass out. And I literally did pass out in one of the classes. And I walked out and I was like, I will never, ever do that again. So that put me off yoga, because that was my first introduction. And that's, I suppose, what drove myself personally, and I know you as well, Rachel, that our whole approach to Yoga Mara is to make yoga accessible and to understand that there are so many different styles of yoga and meditation, breathwork out there. And there's so many different ways to feel better in yourself. And wherever you are on your own personal journey, we just know from our personal experiences how much this practice has helped us grow individually, but also grow together, especially now that we have set up this business. And I suppose to give listeners a background into my own personal history and what have you with how I led to Yoga Mara, coming from an events background. That's where the idea came from. I was working in events for years in Dublin, absolutely loved the industry, but it was a crazy industry. It was always all go, 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 travelled all over the world, which was amazing, and went to the most beautiful venues all over Ireland. And one thing that kept kind of coming up in conversation at different industry events was how many people were suffering from burnout, and that it was nearly worn as a badge of honour. And I remember thinking, this isn't right. Like, how is this something to nearly be achieved? And why do I feel like I'm kind of detaching from this industry now? Because I loved it so much, I was dying to get into it and be in it. And I was literally at the point where I was about to start really progressing my career in that space. I was 28, I think, when I left. Yeah, 28, 29. Which is when you're kind of coming to your main peak, and then you move on up the ladder. But I suppose, talking to other people, listening to what was going on, and also just seeing the stress in everyone's face and in yourself as well, Rachel. Being a primary school teacher, it was the same for you. It didn't really matter what industry you're in. Everyone was suffering from this heavy, heavy stress and lack of balance. And even with the groups we were dealing with, like we would deal a lot with international groups coming over to Ireland. So my job was to kind of spotlight Ireland and showcase this beautiful island and all that we have to offer. And more and more it came up, is there anything that can help with our physical and mental wellness? Do you have yoga available? All these different services. And it was so funny for us to be like, yoga in Ireland. You know, at that time, which there was yoga available, but it just wasn't as accessible.
Yeah.
And I know even when I moved back from Australia and New Zealand, it took me a while to get back into yoga in Ireland because it wasn't as readily available, let's say. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, there's something here. Like people need it. I know I need it. I know people in my industry need it, but also people that my clients that I'm connecting with, they're looking for something in Ireland that has this more holistic approach to enjoying a weekend or enjoying a few nights rather than just going to the pub.
Yeah.
And I suppose for us, we have such a graw and a love and an adoration for the west of Ireland. Like we're both from Galway, we're both West of Ireland women, and spent our summers growing up in Ballyconneely, which is essentially the most beautiful place on the planet. Well, for us anyway. So I know in Ballyconneely we've a mobile home. It's a fancy word for a caravan. But, you know, like we get out there, we'd literally be in our bare feet. There's no phone signal. If it's raining, mum and dad were like, chuck on your wetsuits, out you go. Like entertain yourselves in nature. And that to me, looking back, I'm sure it's the same for you, Rach, looking back was the best gift our parents could have given us because it showed us the importance of simplicity and getting back to roots and getting back to basics and back to nature. And as we grew up, you know, throughout our teenage years, I want to go to the disco. I don't want to be out here in a van with my family. And then because of my previous job, I was always traveling. So when I actually had my time off, I was like, the last thing I'm doing is getting on a plane. Get me out to the west of Ireland. Get me to that caravan. Get the sand and the grass on my feet and let me just reset. And there was that rebalance. And that's really where the idea sparked from. It was like, okay, you're an incredible yoga teacher. We know how spiritually healing and incredible this place is, this nature, this environment is. And because of my background in events, we're like, let's just bring the two brains together, yoga brain, events brain, and let's give it a go. And that's what we did.
I remember actually the morning of our first escape in Ballyconneely, and you know, we woke up in the mobile home and we were ready to move to the Guinness house for a week, which is this stunning house on this private beach in Ballyconneely. And it was, well, it felt like a private beach because it was at the end of the road. I mean, you couldn't really access it. And I remember waking up that morning and Hannah, you looked like it was Christmas morning. You were just like beaming with excitement. And this would just give you a little background on both of our characters. And I was terrified, like so scared because of, you know, the fact I felt like a complete imposter. I just did not feel good enough to offer this. I said, this is way out of my depth. I can't believe I'm actually about to embark on not one, but two back-to-back retreats as, you know, this first launch of a business. So it was a really scary prospect for me. And I like doing it. It was so enjoyable. And I remember at the end of the retreat, after having, you know, met so many incredible people, it just felt so rewarding. And both of us, you know, we went for a little walk afterwards and just like decompress and debrief and chat about it. And both of us just looked at each other and said, we need to do this forever. This is just exactly what we wanted. We wanted to share that piece of heaven that we have in the summer, and also not just Connemara, but the tools, the space to actually just connect back to yourself, because that's exactly what Ballyconneely does for me, and that's what yoga does for me. It was a time, like I remember in secondary school, I was so anxious. I was a very fearful child. I was very fearful as a teenager and such a little worrier, being the eldest, as Hannah pointed out. Actually, just to let you know, at the Lyrath event over the weekend, 2 people thought I was younger. Just
that's
getting
lovely.
That in
Thank
there.
you. Thank you. Yeah.
Just so you
we'll
know.
just edit that out. Tomorrow.
And anyway, but I remember, just going out I think it was in second year and it was September. And I just was so anxious that year going back to school. I just hated it. And we went to Ballyconneely just for the weekend. Mum and Dad brought us out. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, now I can breathe. There was just this space and nature would just allow me to breathe. And Ballyconneely just felt so safe to me, so healing. And I think that's what others got from the escape, you know, and it was just something we both relished in. We were like, this is incredible. We need to keep giving this to people and showing it off to people. And not only just Ballyconneely, but
Ireland.
Ireland, like it was just, there was so many little hidden gems
Yeah.
that people got so much from, you know, and it wasn't this big fancy, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, it was full of action-packed activities. It wasn't about that. It was the slowness of it, the gentleness of it, the connection. And that's something that we are so passionate about. And that's what keeps driving us forward.
100%. And I think like when, you know, we saw the groups coming down, majority of them from Dublin as well, coming down and their shoulders up to there, it's so tense and stressed and you could see it in their faces. And then the melting into the environment, the melting into the process, the trust that they had for us was incredible. Like I'll be forever grateful for that, those first two groups that trusted us to lead them on that journey. And for us to witness that, I think that was the reaffirmation of we actually made a difference here, because they come up, you know, coming up hugging us, some of them in tears, saying that's exactly what I needed. Thank you so much. And all that we did, like you said, Rachel, was hold a space. And
Completely.
I think that's what's, you know, we're so busy. Everyone is so busy in this world. And I was talking to a lady in the yoga class earlier today, actually. And she even said, you know, there's elements of COVID that I miss. And I said, I just said that to Rachel yesterday.
Yesterday on our walk.
Yeah, on our walk, because the slowness and the, you know, the lack of needing to be everywhere all at once and being everything to everyone all at once. It, you know, we always say, well, I always said, I learned so much throughout COVID. I'm never going back to the way it was. And, you know, you're straight back in, you adapt to your environment. And I think that's why we gravitated so much to that environment, because it was slow and steady and chill. But it's been such an amazing journey so far. And it's only going to get better.
Well, I know we're touching on all the positives here.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. It's been 5.5 years of many challenges and, you know, many confronting moments. And it's been like a mirror to us both. And it's highlighted personal fears, personal insecurities so much that we've had to really show up for ourselves. We've had to really lean into the discomfort, and we've grown. And, you know, Yoga Mara has been one of the biggest teaching tools for me personally. But for you, would you be able to share with people, like, what did you find the most challenging aspects of building your own brand and business? Like, what was the most challenging part of, you know, creating this business for you? Or was there a moment or a number of experiences that you just were like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can keep going here?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge was really understanding how to make it a business, because it is a passion. It's an absolute passion. And, you know, at the start, yes, we ran an amazing escape and we loved it and it was incredible. But then how do you sustain that? Like, how do you actually make a living from something that you love that much? And is it possible? And that was something we actually had to really look at. And, you know, we started the business being Yoga Mara Escapes. That's still our Instagram handle, little plug there. But it's still, you know, the whole concept of this, when we sat around that kitchen table, 2017 Christmas dinner, I'll never forget it. Our Uncle Patrick came up with the name. You know, the whole concept for the business was to create these bespoke escapes that would pop up all around Ireland, because of kind of my event side and the tourism side as well, that we wanted to showcase the best, most beautiful parts of Ireland that people may not necessarily know so much about. And that we would hire in the private chef, like we had Finn Whalon, she was incredible.
Amazing.
You know, that we would bring in the locally sourced food. So keeping it sustainable and being able to basically bring business to other areas that may not, like Dublin is overrun with business and people staying in hotels there and everything, but trying to spread it out over the country as well. And then after we ran our first couple of escapes, you know, the two in Ballyconneely, then we did some in Clifton, we realised so much work goes into it. It is so much. As in, there's so much of us that gets put into those events, because so much energy. And it's not just the teaching of yoga. No. Like at that stage, I hadn't even qualified as an instructor yet. It was only February 2019 I qualified. So the yoga was all down to you. And it's not like the yoga part is nearly the easy part.
It is absolutely the easiest part.
Whereas when you're hosting, you're holding space, you want to make sure, and I think that's just because that's in our nature, that we want to make sure everyone is comfortable. Like, I love meeting people, you love meeting people, we love having the chat and sitting up and making sure that everyone's enjoying themselves. But at the end of those 3 days, you are depleted, because you're full of of excitement and enthusiasm and absolute adrenaline as well. But you are
We're
energetically
wiped at the
wiped.
end. And
Yeah.
I think it's because there's so many different energies within the room,
Yes. Yeah.
and we are very much like, well, I know definitely we give a lot of our energy to people and we love that.
Yeah.
We always have. And I think growing up, our mum loved hosting people. So does our dad. And, like just loves having people around, connecting.
Yeah.
And that's where we got it from. We love having people over. But it was having that space and, facilitating it for people. But also sometimes when you are yoga teachers, sometimes people mistake you for a therapist and they will open up and share with you things that you are not able to handle and hold space
Yeah.
for. And I think it's really important to understand that and make that known to the person that you are not a professional in a way that's, in a kind way, that you're just, you're not equipped for these kind of, conversations.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if people open up, we're not the type to say, oh, no, I can't talk about this. We would always listen. And yeah, we would feel very wiped at the end. But that's something that, I'm learning day by day as a very empathetic person, sometimes to my detriment, because I feel like a lot of the time, I feel too much, as in I can take on people's emotions too much and their energy. And I have to be very careful about who I surround myself with. I mean, we all know the types of people we're around that we feel depleted after. It might be toxic energy, and you just have to get really selfish and,
Set boundaries.
set really clear and safe boundaries for yourself,
Yeah.
especially if you are the type to give a lot of yourself.
Yeah.
That's something that Yoga Mara is definitely teaching us.
And do you feel like when you, like throughout this process as well, and even getting to the point there where you just said, I'm an empathetic person,
Yeah.
I energy gets taken from me. Did you always know that, or was it something that you've kind of come to discover recently through this experience? And how, when you got to that point, how did you start to say, okay, wait, how am I going to protect my space here? And was that challenging? Because I know so many people struggle with that. So many people struggle with providing healthy boundaries because we're all nearly people pleasers too.
Oh yeah, well, I am definitely number one people pleaser, and that was kind of always my way as far back as I can remember. I don't really know when it all started, but I would definitely have been a yes person, like, yeah, no problem, I'll do it. Yeah, just give it to me, no problem. And just kind of keep the head down and keep going until I actually crashed a couple of years ago. And my whole body was screaming out and I just wasn't listening. Physical symptoms in my body that were going on for years. I was just mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted. Just absolutely wiped. Brain fog, bloating, inflammation in my body, gaining weight. I couldn't lose it. And I wasn't eating anything differently. I was exercising. I was putting myself under immense pressure. And just being a little perfectionist that I am, I was being quite harsh on myself as well. I was, the inner self-talk was very, very negative. And like I touched on earlier, it was my yoga teacher training that first really highlighted to me, wow, you are very unkind to yourself. And my God, I would never speak like that to anybody I love. So why am I speaking like that to myself? And that took a long time to rewire and, many years of slipping back into those patterns. And Yoga Mara was really the main mirror, because with my yoga teacher training, I did it over 3 weeks and then I could leave it. Whereas Yoga Mara, I had to constantly come back. I had to be constantly faced with it. There was exposure with it. So every time, COVID was a huge struggle for me because we went online. And I just panicked. I said, I can't cope with this. This is too scary. And my fear was of people's judgment of me and that I wouldn't be good enough. I wouldn't be, I had a huge amount of body self-image issues. And I just hated the fact that, I'm going to be in yoga gear on Instagram. People are going to think I need to look a certain way. And, when you look at Instagram and you look at yoga, it's all size 6 women that are lifting their legs over in the air. So I suppose that was a big struggle for me, but it also brought me this awareness. I found this new awareness into what was going on in my head. And I explored that a lot. And I spoke to somebody about it for a year or two and worked really hard on, CBT tools, but also it all came back to the yoga and the mindfulness. And that was the only time I would really connect to myself. So then I could actually see and understand what was going on inside.
Yeah.
And it was my thoughts that were actually creating the symptoms.
Yeah.
It wasn't the food I was eating. It wasn't the movement I was doing. It was the thoughts. And it was that gut-brain connection. And I couldn't believe the difference then when I started to change the story.
Yeah.
And change my relationship with myself. And, just if I could give my younger self one piece of advice, it would be to be kinder, be more gentle, be more compassionate. You are doing so well. Keep going and just be patient. Trust the process. But the kindness is key because that inner child was getting battered down. And I used to get so upset and emotional for that little inner child that lived within me because of how unkind I was being to her. So yeah, that was in a very long-winded way.
No, I think
awareness.
But it's so important to make that note, because I think when people may look at you and see you online and be like, how do you think you don't look? Because I used to be like that. I'd be like, Rachel, you are, but not, I'd be like, you look amazing. What is wrong? And it's so many people are silently suffering with that, where they can't take photos of themselves, they can't look at themselves, and it holds them back. It's that fear of being judged. And I've been there too in different ways of being judged. And that
photos,
fear, but that fear prevents you from stepping into
completely
who you are, where you're going to be going. And I think that's where this practice and the type of practice that we offer is where what we're looking at is unblocking fear and allowing people to step into their true selves, to transform internally and then externally. That's the most important. The internal dialogue, like you said, actually affected your external look. Like it's incredible when you think about it.
Yeah.
But I think, that's so important to share, because a lot of people will look at us online maybe and think, sure, they're flying it. Sure, they're great. Yeah. Sure, they're so confident. It's like
the internally panicking inside.
And like the reason that we're in the business is because we need it.
Yeah. Oh my God. It is literally my medicine. I can't go a day without one of the three, whether it's mindfulness, meditation, or movement. I can't go without it. And, for us, I think, that's a huge thing to note. Like photos for me were such a trigger. Oh my God, such a trigger. And, there's no easy way around it. If you fear of something, unfortunately, the key is you have to lean into it. Yeah. But when you do lean into it and you go into the discomfort, it does get so much easier and it becomes less scary. Like fully, I have done it before. I have done it many a times. I've gone into something where I've been terrified, and it never is as scary as it seems in your head.
Yeah.
It really isn't. No more than the unknown. We create these scary situations that are just
our thoughts hold so much power.
Yeah.
And that's where I love, and we put up our daily affirmations on our Instagram as well. I love seeing people select their one each day, and we have that on our app as well, those affirmations. And if you don't know what affirmation is, or if you see them but don't necessarily understand the power of it, the affirmation is essentially telling you what you want to know and how you want to feel and the energy that you're going to bring in. And you always repeat it in the present tense. So like Rachel, in your case, for example, it would have been like, I am kind and I am good enough. And in my case, it could be like, I've no fear of judgment. I let go of the past and the past has no control over me, and all those different things. And the more that you say those affirmations, the more that you start to rewire the brain, the more that you start to work on your thoughts proactively, because I think it's like 80% of our thoughts are negative, which is incredible. So we have to work that little bit extra hard, because it's like anything. Like you look at any celebrities that are online and they can look at hundreds and thousands of the most beautiful comments about them, and then that one negative comment is the only thing they'll focus on. And that's the same with our internal dialogue. And we just need to be more aware. And I think that's where the meditation, the mindfulness, the breath work, the yoga itself as well, it's all about awareness. And our goal with this business, with this podcast, with everything that we do, is to create more awareness and awareness of what's out there that can help. Maybe you're not going to be gravitated towards yoga, but maybe it's something else that we're going to discuss throughout the podcast that you're going to gravitate towards that can help. And, it's just about giving the people back those tools and that self-empowerment to just better yourself in every way. And just not being able to, or not having to feel like, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
Like this is the new normal. This is who I am, what I'm going to achieve. This is my limit. This is my cap. There's nothing else outside of this.
That is one thing that really struck me after the most recent workshop we did in December. At the end of December, we did a reset and renew workshop, and it was all around breath work and meditations, letting go of, the past and things that have a hold on us. Things that no longer serve us. And that can be a really tricky thing to do. And it can be a really triggering thing for people to hear because, it seems like it's so easy to let go, but it's a process and it takes time and it takes a lot of steps towards reaching that goal.
Yeah.
And when we shared our stories at that workshop, as vulnerable as it was and as scary as it was to share that, but, the response was so positive. People were just so grateful to hear, oh my gosh, Rachel, I resonated so much with what you said. Hannah, what you said, I that happened to me too. And what they felt was less alone. And I think that's our goal with this podcast. Why we've set this podcast up is not only to create awareness on the benefits of yoga and meditation and mindfulness, but it's also to just let you know that, whatever you're going through, I guarantee you're not alone in it. That if Hannah or I haven't been through it, somebody else has, and they'll probably be on the podcast in turn. But it is just lovely for people to hear and share in those problems as well.
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, look, you came out the other side and you're fine. You're doing really well.
Yeah.
And as you said, they don't have to accept this, because when I was going through what I was going through, I did not want to accept it. I was like, this is not my new normal. I cannot accept that. I feel like I'm not in my own body. That was the feeling for so long. And I'd say it to people and they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, you look great. Like, what are you on about? It's a feeling. It is a feeling that just has a hold on you, and in your gut, there's something not right. No matter how many blood tests are run and they say you're fine, it doesn't matter. You know best. There's something amiss. There's something out of whack, out of alignment. And that's what yoga did for me. It brought me back, and it taught me and highlighted to me what was missing, what needed to be nurtured, what needed to be cared for. And over time, oh my gosh, the difference is just crazy. It's amazing. And don't get me wrong, there's times where I feel back in that place, but I'm not in it as long. I can come back out. I have the tools. And that's something I'm forever grateful for.
That's the key, that you have the tools, and like we have our little toolkit and we can go to that. And I think what's good to note as well, Rachel, you've worked with children because, as a primary school teacher, and I love when you talk about the children you work with, your face lights up. Like you can tell that you loved teaching, and you are still teaching now, but it's yoga. It's a different form of teaching. But I love the way you started to bring in mindfulness for children, because that, like, imagine if we had those tools and we were 3 or 4, and then when we actually reach the point where we need them, we're like, oh, I know what this is. I'm aware of this trigger. I know how I can help myself come out of that fog and calm myself back down. Whereas sometimes I think as adults, and I think the majority of people in my industry, they didn't have the tools at that stage. So they reached burnout. So it's understanding the signs. So can you talk people through the types of practices maybe you went through with your children and how it helped them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the staggering thing is that so many kids, young kids, as young as 4 and 5, are suffering with anxiety. And especially after COVID and during COVID, it was such a scary time for them. And, they were only seeing half of our faces. So they couldn't even see our facial expressions because we were all wearing masks, and it was so different, so daunting for them. But kids are so resilient, but they're also sponges, and they literally soak up information so quickly. So it's a great time to learn a language because they're so well able to take it in. But what I did was, when I had senior infants, I was teaching up in Dublin for a few years, and it was a senior infant class in an inner city school, and the focus and attention span was very short. And there was, some kids in my class that had special needs and autism. They found it very hard to sit for a period of time. Not long periods of time, but just found it really hard to just regulate themselves. So I tried introducing mindfulness into the class, and they were called brain breaks. Now, they were very short to begin with, so it could be 30 seconds. And I'd have a little chime that you'd ring the chime and they'd have to listen to it for as long as they could. But they were doing it in silence with their eyes closed. And it was nearly a competition for them. But what they didn't realize was they were actually being still and quiet and focusing on that one thing. And then we started bringing in the breath. And I actually taught them about the science behind it, what was actually going on with their brain. And, we used like different objects to highlight that, and they were so well able to take it all in. Like one kid was like, yeah, my hippocampus, Miss Healy, about her brain. I'm like, how? I would have said hippopotamus, like as a child, that she was able to actually label parts of the brain at 5 years of age. So kids are well able to take that information in. They're well able to understand. And I think when they understand it, there's, like adults, there's more of a buy-in then. They can help themselves. And I remember one parent coming into me and she said, oh, Miss Healy, I got such a fright last night. My little daughter was sitting at the counter and her head was in her hands, as if she was crying nearly. And she tapped her on the arm. She said, are you all right? And she said, oh, Mum, I'm taking my brain break. As if like, back off. I'm having a little moment now. But that mum was so grateful for those tools because that child was very particularly anxious. And for me, I was a very anxious child. I remember I didn't have the language for it at the time. Neither did my parents. It was a different time.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up, and I was senior infants as well for me. And I remember I was so scared of my teacher. And I just woke up with a pain in my tummy. I was too sick to go to school. I was sore tummy all the time. And what it was anxiety.
Yeah.
And I was just such a nervous little child. And I was so scared that she would shout at me or give out to me or give out to somebody in the class. Who was she going to give out to next? And if I had had those tools at that age, and even just the language and the education around it, oh my gosh, it would have been a very different experience.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I had such a passion to bring that to younger kids, and any age really, but especially the younger the better, because you create the foundation then, and it starts to become an ingrained habit. It's just something they go to, so it's a lot easier to keep on.
It's amazing. And I'm going to go back to, I suppose, when we started talking about our journey with Yoga Mara and how different, like you mentioned earlier, the fear of going online. And had it not been for COVID, we would never have done that. No. Never. Well, we may have, but not as quickly as we did. Because I suppose after the escapes, we were saying how depleted we were, but how are we going to make this a business? Like that was such a challenge because we couldn't be running an escape every week. And that was unsustainable. So we had our yoga classes, we had different events, with different hotels and things like that. Started doing the Zen hens. They are so much crack. We love those. But, working with corporate stuff like that. And then shut down. And we were forced into this new world. I remember trying to figure out videos and look at us now on a podcast. Like who knew this was like crazy, so far reaching. But trust the process, guys, trust the journey. But yeah, I think looking back at that time, it was so scary and it was really daunting. But when you look back at it, it's been one of those big moments and it's been a big highlighter for us, and it got us to reach more people. And that's kind of the goal here, isn't it? It's to really connect with as many people as we can, to help as many people as we can. And that's why we're so happy. We launched watchyogamara.com last year, the end of last March, and the Yoga Mara app, and that has all of our videos on demand. So we'll leave everything in the show notes if you guys want to check them out. It has our meditation, our affirmations, our breath work, our yoga. Rachel, you now qualified as a Pilates instructor, so there's some Pilates being
I love
added
the way
in.
you're putting on an American
I know.
accent for that.
Let's go Pilates. But it's been such an incredible journey so far. I'm so excited for what's to come. And I think, throughout the next few episodes, we're going to meet such incredibly interesting people, and we're so excited to share their stories with you and their advice and their health and wellness tips. And moving forward, we'll be back on talking about more of our own personal stories. But this episode is really just to give an overview of who we are. and why we're here. And we're here for you. And if we're open to feedback, and if you have questions, please reach out to us, follow us on Instagram. We love, chatting to people online. We love connecting in person as much as we can. And we'll have loads of things coming up over the next year. So it's going to be a really good one, a really exciting one. And we just hope that you enjoyed this little snippet into Hannah and Rachel from Yoga Mara and why we're here and what we're all about.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to the Love Your Limits podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If something resonated with you or you would like to learn more, please find all contact details in the show notes. We are also delighted to offer our listeners 1 month free access to Yoga Mara on demand. Use the code LOVEYOURLIMITS at sign up to watchyogamara.com. And remember, learning to love your limits is an act of self-care and self-love.